Okay, so there's been a lot of talk about unicorns and the markets being hot, and so it's interesting to see that obviously the U.S. the U.S. has the most unicorns, and and also the largest valuations as well. But closely behind, but after the U.S., you also have, in terms of an individual country, the next biggest is China, followed by Europe. And it's interesting to see if you, I don't know if there's infrared in this, but it's interesting to see that that hardware and on-demand seem to have the highest average valuations in their sector. On-demand is, example of on-demand is like Uber or things that you request on demand. And hardware obviously is self-defined. I'll just move on. Now, most unicorns fall into these categories. Obviously, they're different ones. An interesting or favorite of Intel is the software stack, and also we invested in or we bought Cloudera. But also the databases or data-driven analytics. We think that is an interesting space to be in, and that would be somewhere where you would see a lot more unicorns. But yes, you do have unicorns obviously who are disrupting the industry. So if you disrupt the industry, you expect to be valued very high. If you don't disrupt and you're a copycat, but you're a copycat at the right time, you imagine to be a good unicorn as well. Now this is interesting. This is the most interesting slide in my view. What we found is the unicorn founder profile is, tends to be, the average age is 34. So if you are younger than 34, then you still have a shot of being a unicorn founder. If you're older, then hurry up, go for a fund, start a fund or start a company and get funded and become a unicorn. The most interesting number is the 50%, or the average of 50%. What we found is, on average, around 50% of U.S. unicorns have co-founders who are not born in the U.S. And what does that mean? It means that there is no real formula to the unicorn discussion. It's actually a very wide range of companies and people who from different parts of the world driving the unicorns. So moving on. So a question that we often get is, how do I become a unicorn? I wouldn't say that there is a basic way of becoming one, but there are certain things I can allude to. First of all, a lot of value is in the digital space has always been emphasized on consumers. which is true. But there's also a lot of value as well in the B2B business model. You need to know what you want to do. You need to be sure about what you're doing, and you need to be clear about what you want to do. What we've seen is, at least at Intel Capital, is that majority of our very successful exits have been the CEOs have been very clear and be very consistent in what they want to do. In terms of funding, you would see that on average between $100 to $300 million is sort of the amount. It depends on the geography. So, for example, Asian companies take far less than European companies or US companies, and US may seem, or it appears that there may be a slight bubble in the US. The valuations, 69x, next 12 months, and the estimated median, I like that stat actually, the estimated median valuation per employee is 17.5 million. So the next time, so if you're an employee or if you work in a startup, you should tell your CEO, I'm actually worth 17.5 million, and he or she would probably tell you, well, we're not worth $1 billion, so maybe you're not. This talks about the number of rounds it takes to be, before you get that great exit. On average, it's between 4 and 6 rounds we have seen, leading to a $1 billion valuation. And the amount is, like I said earlier, between 100 and 300 million. Most people raise between 100 and 200 million. Capital efficiency, or should we say, where do you put your money? Or another way to say it is, what business should I, or what type of business or what type of entrepreneur should I be? So what we've seen is consumer businesses are interesting. E-commerce has a lot of unicorns, mainly because it's transformational and people like to shop. However, business to business tends to even be more effective in terms of creating unicorn exits. Enterprises, Stripe was a very successful exit. MongoDB, Intel Capital invested in that. And healthcare is also seems to be a very effective way to get a unicorn. So I guess the real, I'm sure everyone is used to hearing this, is creating value. So if you do create value, you will be able to potentially get a good exit. Maybe not a unicorn exit, but a good exit. And the focus is always on creating value and also on ensuring that the end user is happy. So unicorn exits. What we've seen is 2012 was a significant year in terms of size. But last year, 2014, has been the highest number of unicorns since 2000. Even though the total value of the exits weren't as much as 2012. We had a lot of unicorn exits in 2014. And the slide to the right talks about the difference between exits and valuations by VCs. And what it's saying, which may be surprising or not surprising to some of you, is that in 2014 there was a huge difference between the amount of exits and the amount of billion-dollar valuations. But that might just also mean that we're in a bubble. Consumer versus enterprise exits. So it's interesting to see that there are a lot more enterprise exits, which is business to business. However, there's a lot more value in business to consumer, B2C, which is what this slide says. And I like this one. This is the number of VCs with unicorn exits. So obviously, a lot of VCs have one, and the numbers go down. But when you cross over from 7 to 8, then you're talking about the really successful investors who are able to pick unicorns consistently. And what you find is that they tend to invest in the businesses very early on. So they're also very, very clear in picking exits. I think that's it.
Excellent. So,
yeah.
Can I try to bounce you the question of, in your view, how many unicorns are going to die in the next 3 years?
How many unicorns are going to die in the next 3 years?
Percentage or the number?
I personally think that we are in a little bit of a bubble. But if you look over the last 10 years, so two things. One is the fact that relevance is the only thing that's constant is change. So, dying is part of change, and not evolving is part of change. But I would say if you look at the Fortune 50 companies 10 years ago, technology companies were a minority. If you look at the Fortune 50 companies today, majority of them are technology companies. So what you find is that more technology companies or technology is becoming more relevant in terms of valuation and in terms of value. So, that's my view.
So this is like a wealth of data that's sort of underlying the unicorn discussion. Any questions from the audience? Excellent.
That it? Thank you.